Looking back, I remember there were a lot of people involved in this project. There wasn't a localized center for research. We had the Barnhart Station, we had the station at Sonora, we had Balmorhea, and we needed some central source for a very wide area here in West Texas. I'm not sure just what cities were competing in the race that we were competing in to get the center, but everybody wanted that center located at San Angelo.
I was a very young journalist at that time, working for the Texas Sheep and Goat Raisers Association as editor of their magazine, where I spent 10 years. I remember at the time I thought, well, what is this going to do as far as impacting what we're doing? The word back then was that it was going to take the place of the experiment station at Sonora. Of course, we know now that all it did was impact it a little bit more.
Producers at that time were facing problems in terms of poisonous plants and management of the rangelands that they didn't fully understand, and they wanted some help. And so they went to the legislature in Texas A&M University and put up half the money themselves to establish this place.
Well, the concept that Texas A&M had when they developed these research extension centers over the state was to develop facilities out in regional areas and staff those with competent scientists, both extension staff and research people. The research people develop new technology and the extension people take it out to the people. But they wanted teams to be developed where the people would work together to solve problems, whether it's improving the productivity of Rambouillet sheep or brush control or bitterweed toxicity or whatever the problem might be. This center is unique because I think it has two real strengths that's made it very effective, and those are a competent staff that had the right attitude. They had an attitude of working together and cooperating, and that was essential, but they involved the people in the center. The center was developed because the people in San Angelo area and West Texas wanted a center to be developed here to help them.
Earl Rudder told us we'd have to raise $150,000, which I didn't think we would do, but the business people in San Angelo responded quite readily to that. We raised, I think, about $175,000, and the thing came into being. And it was designed primarily to serve the research needs for the sheep and goat industry.
They envisioned these centers as a wave of the future, and a way to go is to take the scientists to the field and put them in close contact and proximity of the problems and the people that they were working for. We also had an opportunity to walk regularly 2 doors down and visit with a scientist that was doing work in nutrition or range or whatever the area might be, wildlife, whatever it might be, and sit down and talk to them, and they could give us the scientific aspects and review the data with us.
Two popular programs that have been provided here in the past and will continue in the future, present and future, is the Rambouillet Ram Performance Test and the Angora Goat Billy Performance Test. Those two activities are very important to the ranching community.
The Rambouillet Ram Performance Test began in Sonora in 1948, and I think the Angora Goat Performance Test began somewhere in the late 60s or early 70s, and they went on and off for a while, and then finally continued in 1981 and have been going ever since. And originally we only had the performance testing program, and in 1974 they initiated a sale with the Rambouillet Ram Performance Test. And I think they initiated the sale in 1981 with the Angora Goat Performance Test. And since the initiation of those sales, other people were able to come in and buy these highly superior bucks and rams and use them in their program.
You're able to determine an outstanding individual or a certain trait that you may be lacking in your herd and trying to bring that trait in or make it stronger or get away from a certain trait.
When you talk about averages, you just got an average system. We've somehow got to break out of that mold, and I think the performance test has taught several of us that there are differences. And by all means, it is genetic and hereditary. It really is.
The main things we've done in the past 10 or 12 years have been to develop and evaluate new methods of measuring wool and mohair cashmere fibers more efficiently, more accurately, and less expensively. In the past, measurement of fiber diameter on wool and mohair has been a long, arduous, expensive process involving manual measurements on a projection microscope, and it's been a relatively expensive test. And now we have a system that uses automatic image analysis that can measure several thousand fibers in a couple of minutes.
The rest of the world and mills around the world became to the point where they expected to buy wool that had been classed to a certain length, a certain fineness, and off-type wools taken out of it so that it could go directly into their machinery with the least amount of cost in the mill. And our original bag wools didn't fit that category.
And the overall effect on the industry has been to bring the cost of fiber testing down to a level that producers can afford to get even individual animals tested for $5.
The early research that was done here dealt more with animal health, animal diseases. Then gradually they phased in animal science type research.
Some of the diseases that are of interest to people in this area are diseases of sheep, cattle, and goats. Sore mouth, which is a disease of sheep, has caused problems in this area for a number of years. In fact, Dr. Hardy and Dr. Boughton at the Sonora Experiment Station in 1931 developed a vaccine for this that's still in use today. It's a good vaccine because it's a living virus vaccine, and it produces a solid immunity to all the types of sore mouth that are present in the Edwards Plateau area.
We have three major brush problems in this part of the state: prickly pear, mesquite, and cedar. What we've seen in terms of ranchers' management of brush over the past few years is actually a decline in the use of brush control. And a lot of that is because of the high expense, increasing cost.
If we were to burn and then follow up with the chemical, we're cutting the cost immediately in half.
The effectiveness of fire by itself is generally not sufficient to meet the management objectives of our ranchers. So what we've developed that's most effective is a combination of using prescribed fire followed by the broadcast application of reduced rates of Tordon 22K. We found we can reduce the rate of herbicide by 50 to 75%.
We've developed publications that are 1, 2, 3, follow the steps. We've changed the terminology, got rid of a lot of the buzzwords, and we've put a package together that's really very unique in that it is truly an integrated extension experiment station program where we take the research, we take the technology we have, and then we take it to the landowner and try to get adoption and use of that technology.
In the earlier years, we worked in what we call base programs where we addressed such issues as foods and nutrition, areas like clothing construction, financial management.
In the past, we worked with very traditional type families, meeting very traditional types of needs, and now we're working with families that are a little bit less than traditional. They aren't quite the beavers that we were used to seeing back in the 70s. It takes a progressive mind to recognize those needs. As we address very baseline programs in the 70s, now we're looking toward issues that are very, very important to these new families.
About 2 years ago, I received federal grant money and was able to hire a program assistant to work with disadvantaged families in the area of food and nutrition and health and safety, and we also include some parenting issues.
Extension has the structure to put a program in place to identify and help solve those needs. We have the best structure and a unique structure for education in the country.
As far as farming, we serve a 23 county area out of this particular research center as far as my responsibilities. And in that 23 counties, we have a number of crops that we produce. We have small grain production, counting both oat and wheat production, that's almost 1 million acres that's served here. Cotton on a number of acres, well over 300,000 acres.
One of the programs that we were involved in and instrumental in implementing here was a change in planting dates for cotton growers that basically was a non-chemical tactic to control the boll weevil. This program resulted in increased yields of cotton and also decreased production costs. And an economic analysis that was conducted indicated that this program increased revenues to cotton growers and had a statewide economic impact in the southern rolling plains of about $32 million a year. We have available now and in the future many technologies that will really impact in a very positive manner on crop production in this area. A lot of the biotechnology work that's just being implemented at this point, and some of what we would call low impact on the environment work that's being done, I think will be very instrumental in the future in maintaining crop production at a high level and maintaining environmental quality that we'd all like to see.
My greatest concern is predation. Predation problem is unique to us, and the predation problem is a very significant part of the loss in numbers in this country. There are solutions to the predator problem, but they're not easy.
It's the predator situation and the removal of potential lease ground for sheep and goat country. I see those as being two real factors that will affect this area, this economy out here relative to sheep and goat production. For example, let's say that you're in the sheep and goat business, but your neighbor buys this 2 sections or 10 sections next to you, and he's not interested in sheep and goats, he's interested in white-tailed deer. His interest in predator control probably won't be as keen as what yours is if you're in the sheep and goat industry. So then there's a chink in the armor, if you will. There's an open wound that allows, now all of a sudden the coyotes and bobcats might reach a higher population on this parcel of land than on your land if it was sheep and goats. That's a greater threat to that person or to those people that are still in the sheep and goat industry. This center has always been the leader in sheep and goat situations. In any kind of factors, whether it be biological or sociological, that affect the industry are going to have an impact on this center, and hopefully vice versa. Hopefully we can see, as educators, can see what these programs, what these trends are, and if there's a way to minimize their impact, we should be trying to do that.
We see now that many of our people who are making decisions did not benefit from an extensive background of experience in seeing things happen on the land. And more of our decision-making process, we are able to access expertise like the people here at this center.
It is unique in the United States, and it has a reputation, a national reputation, for being a center of excellence for sheep and goat and wool and mohair production. And because of our wool and mohair lab and our strong research program with genetics, breeding, and nutrition of sheep, it is a source of information for the whole sheep industry and goat industry in the United States. I've enjoyed being a resident director. It was interesting to come in and see this mesquite country here when I first interviewed for the job, and then see a center develop that I'm proud of, that I think has been very important to the industry in this part of the state. And that has happened in 25 years, and it shows that it's an evolving thing, and it will continue to grow and develop and be greater, I think, of greater importance in the future.